Alright everyone, you've got a quiz tomorrow, and this video is going to be a golden ticket to success on that quiz tomorrow. If you got everything correct in class, you are off to a wonderful start and you should be just fine. So, let's start. You have 4 graphs tomorrow, ranging in level of difficulties. If you can handle both of these, you'll be good to go. There's just going to be a mix. So the first thing you have to do is look at which form this is in, and this is the form that's got the number off to the right. So that's going to tell you, again, that your vertical asymptote is x equals 2, because your vertical asymptote is always what makes the denominator 0. So we've got x equals 2, we've got our vertical line, we'll just might as well graph it right now so we don't forget later. And then we have our horizontal asymptote. When we have the number off to the side, that is our horizontal asymptote. So it's y equals a negative 1. Y equals negative 1, horizontal. Let's graph it now. Our holes. Remember, holes only occur when we have something that's exactly the same on top and bottom that cancel each other out. In this case, there are no holes at all, because there's no x minus 2 on top, so we can't cancel any x minus 2's, so we just write none. So you have to remember, your domain is always going to be x cannot equal any vertical asymptotes or any x coordinates of holes, but since we don't have any holes, we don't have to write anything for that. And our range is y cannot equal any horizontal asymptotes or any y coordinates of holes. Since we don't have any hole, it's just y cannot equal a negative 1. So that's it. You've answered all the information. So the only thing you have left is to graph it. So you have to remember, fractions need their own set of parentheses. Numerator, denominator need their own, and then you've got this guy off to the side. So in y1 of your calculator, you should type parentheses for the fraction, parentheses for the numerator, your 3, close parentheses, divided by, now new parentheses for the denominator, x minus 2, close your parentheses for the fraction, minus 1. And once you type that in the calculator, you should be able to use the table to find out what this graph looks like. So let's give that a try. So there you go. It looks like that. Now what you want to do is press second graph and get a couple of nice points if possible. So we can see that 2, that's where our vertical asymptote is. So a couple points to the left, a couple points to the right will probably work out nice. So we can see that we have a 1, negative 4. And what else did we have? It looks like we also have a negative 1, negative 2. And here goes this side. And then if we bring the calculator back and look to the right of 2, looks like we're going to have a 3, 2. Calculator went a little crazy. And a 5, 0. So we've got 3, 2, 5, 0. And here you go. Now, of course, you can estimate a couple of the other points. When you're given a grid, it's pretty easy to graph and make sure that it looks right. And that would be that. You would have 4 points here, you would have 2 points here, and you would be good to go. Now, if you give me a hole when there isn't one, then you would lose points for it. So you would just have to say none or leave it blank, and you would be all good. Okay? So that's how you do one of these graphs when there's a number off to the side. Our next example is going to take us to where we have multiple different things to look at. And the first thing is always going to be to factor the top and bottom and cancel. So this, first we have to work on this part, and we're going to get the x plus 3. And this is going to be an x minus 3 and an x minus 2 for the top. And we're going to have an x plus 3, x minus 3, and x plus 1 on the bottom. And we can see that both of those guys cancel. Remember, that's going to create our holes. And our final simplified answer is going to be y is equal to a x minus 2 over x plus 1. Now our vertical asymptote and our horizontal asymptote come from the simplified versions. So your vertical asymptote is x equals negative 1, because it's always when you set the denominator equal to 0. Your horizontal asymptote now goes to that chart where you have more x's on top, more x's on bottom, or the same. Well, you have an x and an x. So x over x reduces to 1, so you have y is equal to 1 for your horizontal asymptote. And now we have to talk about holes. The hole happens when something cancels out. So we had an x plus 3 cancel out, so we set it equal to 0. And we have an x minus 3 that canceled out, so we set that equal to 0. We get a negative 3 and a positive 3. But what we do with those is we plug them into the simplified equation. So if we plug in a negative 3, that's going to be a negative 3 minus 2 over a negative 3 plus 1. So that'll give us a negative 5 over a negative 2. So one of our holes is negative 3, comma, 5 halves, or 2.5. The other one is a positive 3. So we're going to substitute a positive 3 into the equation, and we're going to get 3 minus 2 over 3 plus 1, which is 1/4. So we have a positive 3, comma, 1/4. Now again, it's not 3 and negative 3 because those are the numbers that are left. We set them equal to 0. So you get a negative 3 from the x plus 3 and a positive 3 from the x minus 3. Then we substitute these values into the x's of the simplified equation. And that's how you get your hole. So we're going to have a hole at negative 3, 2.5. And we're going to have one at a positive 3, 1/4. And you want to make sure that you make those circles open, because remember, this is going to represent a value that does not exist. So back to our domain. Domain x cannot equal any vertical asymptotes and any x coordinates of any holes. So we have 3 restrictions in this domain. Your range is y cannot equal any horizontal asymptotes and any y coordinates of any hole. And that's it. You're good to go. So if you have those answers, you're probably pretty good. If you do not, then you're going to want to again try these over by yourself when you're done watching this video and see if you can get the correct answers on your own. Now, of course, how do you type this into the calculator? Well, we'll go back, take a look at the calculator, and remember, this calculator is going to need to be typed in a way where you have a simplified version with parentheses around the numerator and parentheses around the denominator. We do not need a separate set for the entire fraction this time. So our numerator is an x minus 2. And we're going to divide that by, and then your denominator is an x plus 1. Press graph. You can see what it looks like. And you can also press second table, and if you have any nice points, which in this case doesn't look like we have many, the only nice one I see is 2, 0 and 0, negative 2. Okay, so we have 2, 0, we have 0, negative 2, and this one will just continue like that. And over here, we're going to have a couple of points as well. and then you're done. So that's it. You should now be a graphing pro. So I left you this room for a little bit of graph notes. As you saw, it said watch the answer key tonight. Well, this is why. I just wanted to recap again everything that you need to know. So, vertical asymptotes. What you do is you always set the denominator equal to 0. Now you can have multiple vertical asymptotes. When you're done factoring, if you have something that looks like 2 over x plus 1 and x minus 3 and nothing cancels on the top, you actually would say that you have a vertical asymptote of x equals negative 1 and an x equals 3. So you would have multiple vertical asymptotes. That is allowed. Just saying. Now, when it comes to horizontal asymptotes, you have 4 different possibilities for horizontal asymptotes. So the horizontal asymptotes is if you have a fraction plus or minus a number off to the side. Your horizontal asymptote is going to be y equals that number. If you do not have the number off to the side and you just have a fraction, if you have more x's on top, so if we had x squared plus, and we'll just say 2 over x, then that would mean you have no horizontal asymptote. Whenever you have more x's on top, there is no horizontal asymptote. If we have the same number of x's on top and bottom, so if we have 2x squared on top and 2x squared on the bottom, the horizontal asymptote is the ratio of the leading coefficients. So y is equal to 2/3. And finally, if you have more x's in the denominator, then that is going to be y equals 0 every time. So if you have more x's in the denominator, and it could be 7x over x squared, where again, when I say more x's, we're talking about the highest exponent. Okay? And the last thing, of course, that we need to talk about is a whole. And remember, a whole always cancels, or always occurs when something cancels on top and bottom. So x plus 1 over x plus 1, obviously you'd have more stuff left. You take what cancels and set it equal to 0. You solve, and that's the x coordinate, and then you substitute the negative 1 into the simplified equation. And then, obviously, whatever that value is would be your y coordinate. Last, domain and range. Domain is always x cannot equal the vertical asymptotes or any x coordinates of your whole. And your range, y cannot equal any horizontal asymptote or the y coordinate of any whole that you have in that particular graph. Now, if you understand all these pieces, you have 4 graphs on the quiz. All you have to do is apply that to all 4 and you're good as gold. Okay? And of course, use your graphing calculator to graph the equation. So, direct, inverse, neither, types of variations. So, remember, when you are trying to just state whether something is direct, inverse, or neither, the first thing you need to remember is x or y or m, any variable. You need to have one variable by itself. Now remember, direct is y is equal to k times x, and inverse is y is equal to k divided by x. K is never in the denominator. K is always on top. So we have an x, we have a y, and this 4 has to be our k. So we have a k on top divided by a variable. That's going to match this pattern right here. So this would be inverse. Now the next example is very similar. However, this has a k on the bottom. We're not allowed to have a k in the bottom for a variation. So what you would need to do is multiply both sides by 4 to get those to cancel, and you would be left with 4y is equal to x. Now you have a variable by itself. You have a k times y, so k times y would be direct. And then the last thing is when you're looking from a chart, you're going to want to multiply and divide. So if we were to do 2 times 3, okay, so 2 times 3 is going to give us 6. 1 times 6 is going to give us 6. And 0.5 times 12 is going to give us 6. So if we have x times y, that is when y was equal to k over x. So k is equal to x times y is known as inverse. So this one is another inverse. Okay, if that didn't work, remember what you would do then is you would try y is equal to kx, which means k is equal to y divided by x. So if that didn't work, you would do y divided by x, y divided by x, y divided by x, and if you got the exact same answer that way, then it would be direct. If you tried both ways, x times y and y divided by x, and you did not get the same k value either way, that means it's neither. So you're going to have to answer 3 questions like that on your quiz tomorrow, and there goes 3 examples right there, so you're good to go. Number 6 is just writing the equation. So you're going to have to do this 3 times on the quiz tomorrow, where you just read what it says and write it down, and you're done. So remember, whenever it says z varies, that means z equals. And now everything else happens with k. So you've got to have a k in it as well. So you might as well just say z varies jointly, or z varies, z equals k. So it says jointly with, so that's going to be multiplication. So we have jointly with x squared and y, but inversely with w cubed. That means that's going to be on the bottom. Okay, so inversely is in the denominator, directly and jointly is on top multiplied to k. So that's all you'd have to do. You just have to read what that says, write the z, the equals the k, and then multiply by x squared and y and divide by w cubed. Number 7 is where we still have to write the equation, but we actually need to find our value of k and then go back and solve. So for this example here, we have a varies jointly with b and c. So the first thing you might want to do is say a is equal to, and then k times b times c. Substitute everything you're given in this step. So 12 is equal to k times b times c, which is going to give you 12 is equal to a negative 4k. So k is equal to a negative 3. But that's not it. You need to write the equation. That's what it says. It says write the equation. It doesn't just say solve for k. So after you solve for k, you need to write a is equal to a negative 3bc. This is your joint variation equation. So now that it says find b when a is equal to a negative 18 and c is 2, so then you're just going to go back and you're going to say negative 18 is equal to a negative 3 times b times c of 2. So that's a negative 18 is equal to negative 6b, so b is equal to 3. And now you have just got full credit on number 7. Now you will have to do 2 of those on the quiz tomorrow. So let's think about that. You've got 3 where all you have to do is state direct, inverse, or neither. That's going to be 1 point apiece. You've got 3 where you just have to write the variation equation based on a sentence. Those are going to be 1 point apiece, so there's 6. And then you're going to have 2 of these, and those are probably going to be worth 3 points apiece. So you're looking at 8 questions and 12 points on variation. So make sure you understand variation. But if you got everything right there, you're probably going to be good to go, unless you are only strong with joint but not inverse variation. If you know them all, you are good to go. And there will be one 4-point word problem very similar to what you see here. So it says you are having a party to study for your test, and you are having food catered. The cost is $7 per person plus a $10 delivery charge. So It doesn't matter. Let's pretend you're getting Italian beef, some peppers, some sausage, and some cheese, and a whole bunch of other stuff, maybe some mozzarella, good old-fashioned Italian dinner. And they're going to deliver it for $10 no matter what you order. So if you're going to order for 10 people or if you're going to order for 100 people, they're only going to charge you $10 for delivery. So to write an equation of the total cost, well, your total would be $10 or $7 per person plus the one $10 delivery. Okay, so that would be an equation for your total cost. The average per person is just going to be, the average is always the total divided by the number of people. So basically your equation is going to look the exact same. So A for average is equal to the total cost, 7x plus 10, divided by x number of people. That would be your equation for the average. Now to answer how many people need to come to make an $8 average, for that you just set A as 8. And that's equal to 7x plus 10 over x. So now what we're just going to do is we're just going to multiply both sides by x to get rid of the x in the denominator. So that's 8x is equal to 7x plus 10. Subtract 7x from both sides and you get x equals 10 people. And that makes sense because if you think about 10 people, that would be $7 per person. So that's $70 in food plus the $10 delivery charge. It's going to be $80 for that order. And, well, divide by the 10 people and you get $8 for your average. So how much would it cost if for each person if 20 people come to the party? Well, for that, again, you just have to substitute your 20. So the average cost per person would be 7 times 20 people plus 10 divided by 20. So that's going to give you $150 divided by 20 people, and all you have to do is figure out that that is going to be $7.50 per person. If you were able to get all of these questions correct when you did these on your own, you are going to be golden on your quiz tomorrow. If you got quite a few wrong, even though you just watched this, I highly recommend that you retry these. Try these questions again. I will post a blank copy of this on the website along with this video, along with the answer key, and you try it again. Check your answers. If you get them correct the second time, you're probably going to be fine. All right. Sorry I was not there today, but here you go. This should suffice and be a wonderful tool for you for tomorrow. This is Longo and I'm out. See you. Bye.